DBS community, welcome back to another video here with Kyle Chris. It's been a few months since we have put out any sort of content, but with the changes to the Fusion World meta, I felt like it was a good time to come back and start making some Fusion World content. We'll have some Masters content on the channel as we go. We'll kind of see, probably more so like weekly uploads. I'm not going to be doing daily uploads. I just don't have the time to do that as of right now. So we'll start here. So we have just a 4-tier list. Nothing too extravagant when it comes to what types of tiers. Realistically, a lot of these decks are going to be good. There's maybe a few decks I just don't feel like are very good or don't have at least the potential as of right now. This is before set 3. But most of these decks are comparable. Most of these decks are playable. Like I said, you can probably pilot almost any of these decks and do pretty decent. So we will start with green, since green has kind of been dubbed the new king of the format. I don't know how much I agree with that. I think green is going to be really strong. And green might be the highest represented when it comes to winning, potentially. But I think all of these colors are, outside of red, I think red is probably the worst out of the 4 colors, and even then red still has some legs to be able to do things. So we'll start with Android 1718, the droid duo. This deck has received a very big buff in the with the new 4-drop that came out in set 2. I won't say new, but the 4-drop that came out that allows them to ramp in energy while also being able to have 3 restanding energy or restood energy. I would say this deck is going to be probably high tier 2, low tier 1. So one of the problems with this deck is this deck struggles against blue. I mean, this deck has never performed well in set 1, nor in set 2 has this deck ever been considered a viable option. It was always outshadowed by the other 2 green decks in Broly and Gohan, and it just couldn't really do anything else because the deck was just too slow. Now with that new 4-drop and a few other tools, the deck definitely seems to be very competitive. I would go as far as saying it can probably beat most of the decks on this list. And when you high roll very well, this is maybe hitting droid field on turn 3, then you need to hit the duo on turn 4. This allows you to ramp twice, so you're ramping, so you play the field on turn 3. In turn 4, you are able to play the 4-drop, go from 4 energy to 5, and then use the field to go from 5 to 6. And now you have your leader permanent turned on, and then basically from that point, the turn after that, you'll have 8 energy, right? So this allows you to ramp very quickly, but you have to hit both of those cards on curve, or else it's just not going to be as good. So it's why I'm going to put it in tier 2, because it still has some form of setup, and if you don't hit that setup, you're going to be consistently behind. Now with Gohan, I think Gohan is going to be the tier 1 green deck. It's back to kind of where green was, right? Gohan is the only deck on this list that has the ability of challenging Vegeta leader effect for leader effect, right? And Vegeta is probably one of my favorite picks for best deck in format for the rest of this format because of what the deck has the ability of doing. Being at 35k is really difficult to get out of, especially when you're not really using any cards to get to that point. Vegeta's able to do that just for an activate main, while Gohan can sacrifice an energy to go to 35k. Now this is also effective on offense and defense. So this is something that Vegeta doesn't have access to. So I think Gohan is, without a doubt, the best green deck for the remainder of this format. And depending on how good Piccolo is next set, Gohan still might be the best green deck. Now Gohan does have its struggles, of course. I think Gohan is going to struggle into yellow aggro, more so for like Frieza, Ginu aggro, rather than what the aggro that Vegeta can put out, which is not, I would not necessarily call it aggro, it's more so mid-ranged. But the effects that, the Frieza army, Frieza clan combination with Raccoon, like this can just spit out 20Ks. You're gonna be up a creek a little bit. So you are only at 20k, so that's costing you a card per hand per attack. And green doesn't have incredibly good board wipes. You have the secret rare, and then you have the ability of playing a card which will KO something and then swinging something else. But a lot of your cards are really big. While they're spitting out, 2 drops, 3 drops for, 3 energy, you have to be able to tweak your list in order to deal with those. But I do think Gohan is going to be the best green deck, at least going into set 3. Then we have Cell. I would put Cell in tier 3. I think Cell is just a step below Android, the Android decks when it comes to ramping. Similar to the droids, you have to wait now until turn 4. So you're using Destructive Strength on turn 3, and then Cell games on turn 4. However, neither one of those cards have combo power. So you are running an equivalent of 8 cards that have no ability to be comboed at all. That's if you're running 4 and 4 of the Cell game and Destructive Strength, respectively, right? Then that's not including any other card that you have to run. This is not also including Broly that you're going to run in there. This is also including the droids that you're going to run. It's also including Cell that you're going to run. You're up to at least 14 cards that you're going to be running. 13, 14 cards that have no combo power at all. That's pretty bad. That is pretty bad. So, again, you're not really going to want to... I don't think Cell is quite there. I think Cell is probably missing a few more tools. But it is still a good deck. For probably more so local level. With going back to green matchups, green versus green is good, but now we're looking at, okay, how much combo power do you have in a green matchup? And you only have 4 super combos, and you only have so much energy for gigantic meteors. So what else do you have if you have a bunch of field cards, or a bunch of extra cards, and a bunch of 0K combos, right? This brings us to Broly, which is the last green deck. Personally, I think Broly is still a very good deck. I'm going to put it at tier 2. I think Broly, one big caveat to Broly is being in 25k. This plus Senzu Bean is going to allow you to mitigate a lot of the yellow aggro that we're probably going to see probably take shape over the next month until set 3 comes out. Broly also has a very strong rare that came out in set 2 that I didn't see a lot of people talk about, obviously because green was just kind of non-existent with Topku running around. But that 7-drop allows you to pop any of your battle cards and any of your opponent's cards and place them in their energy. With having, the little Shimoans, the little 1-drop blockers that you have, you can easily board one of those, pop it back to your energy, use that energy to use your leader skill to draw a card and go up to 30, and then use a Paragus to play it back out, and you can just continuously cycle that. Broly's going to go the really long game. This is probably the most control, the longest game state we're going to have for green decks. So it has kind of the most... it's also, I think it's also the weakest in some cases early, also because of going from 5 to 3 is really bad, because you do have to crit a life in order to awaken. So you really don't want to be going down to 2 energy or 2 life. So it's got its problem there, but I think if you build it really defensively and then just focus completely on the late game and surviving early, Broly's going to stand out, as most of the 25k leaders will going forward, at least until they're power crept. I just think a lot of those are just going to be very, very good. All right, next we're going to go into yellow, which we'll start here with Vegeta. Probably a fan favorite, honestly. This deck seems to be getting a lot of hype around it. I think Vegeta has a lot of interesting tools, being a mid-range yellow deck that has the ability of restanding on your opponent's turn. What's really good about that is you have 3 cards as of right now that you can access on your opponent's turn that all have power increases. These are going to be very good. This allows you to play defense while being able to tap out offensively. I would say Vegeta is probably going to be a tier 2 deck. Now, what you'll see too, as well, just before I get too far, I'm not going to categorize where in the tier these decks are. I'm just going to be putting them in the tier. So this is not saying that both of these decks are better than Vegeta. It's just saying they're all in tier 2. Okay. Anything else about Vegeta? I mean, both SRs, the Vegeta and Goku respectively, both of those cards are insane. This gives Vegeta a really good advantage, I think, And as the game kind of evolves, while we're getting more and more extra cards that can activate during the battle step, I think this deck is just going to continuously get better. Honestly, you can play it sort of generic. It's almost as generic as Frieza, right? Just kind of the Saiyan version of it. So I'm sure you can kind of tweak it to kind of fit your playstyle a little bit. But as the more extra cards come out that have Activate Battle, this deck's just going to continue to get better. Then we have Ginu. I'm going to put Ginu in tier 4. I think the deck is just... I think it just loses to almost everything. It obviously has the ability of just turning the corner and just being incredibly hyper aggro. But I think a lot of good players should know kind of how to play around Ginu, obviously. One big thing, obviously, with green is Senzu Bean I think should make an appearance in most green decks going forward, at least until the next set, of course. Most of my comments will be until, obviously, set 3. But most of your stuff's swinging 20k, and once you're out of that 20k range, they have to give up cards in hand now, and it's just not going to be as good. Cooler's probably tier 3. Being a crit leader, that now, big thing is, if you go turn 1, you are able to draw a card now. So this is actually really good. You can draw a card turn 1, which is going to help every deck, but really, like, the crit leaders are really going to be, taking advantage of this, because now they don't have to worry about being down in hand size as much, right? Cooler was known sort of as like the anti-green deck or the anti-Broly deck early on, just because of how much you can swing. I don't know if it's really going to hold up the same anymore. As we haven't seen, I don't think we're getting much, at least so far. We haven't seen any sort of support that would help Cooler, because I think you need Frieza army, the Frieza clan, one of the two. To be able to withstand those. So we haven't actually seen any of those yet. So we'll have to kind of see as we go forward if we're going to be getting anything in set 3. If we don't, this deck's probably just going to kind of continue to fall and not be very relevant going forward. Which then leads us to Frieza, which I do believe is going to be the tier 1 yellow deck. I don't think it's much of a hot take. This deck has been played. Set 1, it was dominating. Even in set 2 with Topku, this deck has topped. Not a lot, but it's been there. And that's saying something. So now without Topku to kind of hold it back, I think this deck is going to do incredible. So look out for Frieza probably being the best yellow deck, at least right now. And then who knows what happens in that 3. I see we've already seen barrier cards that are going to be coming out. So there's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to see in set 3. And I think Frieza is going to benefit from a lot of that. Going in the red, we have Beerus. I think Beerus is probably going to be tier 2. Again, being a crit leader, this deck is going to have a very easy time, I think, against yellow, which is why it's going to be probably, up there. Leader effect, being able to neg a card by 10. Now, the problem is that red did lose double striking potential with Rebrian for 4 energy. Now they have to focus on the 5 energy play. You have only 1 Kefla, which definitely hurts because now you don't have that ability of really stacking value. You can only play the Kefla once. So you kind of open up some slots in the deck. So I'll have to see kind of what comes out in set 3, because that will probably change what it is you're going to add. And then you don't have Roshi, right? So Roshi is a huge hit to the color of red. And honestly, any of the red decks, obviously all of the red decks were playing Roshi, right? Being a 10k was huge. I think it's one thing, because red, next to green, probably has the most 0ks that are relevant to a meta deck. Without that 10k, now you have to fill it with something else, right? And I'm sure they're going to release something, but for 1 energy, being able to take a life and then also activate an extra card for either 1 cheaper or for free if it's 1 energy is something that you just can't replace. So all of the substitutes, I know people said, oh, you can play hit, oh, you can play the Khalifa crit card, you can play the 3-drop Goku, but the fact is that all of those cards cost more energy, and 2 of those cards are 5ks. And I think Khalifa's a 5k, and one of those cards is a 0k. So like you have to fit that value somewhere else in the deck, and now just taking up space. So red's going to be kind of lower in priority, I think, going forward, which is possibly good for red players, because that means cards are going to be cheaper. So it allows you to kind of get your higher rarities while the color's not that good. Brings us to Starter Coup. Speaking of things that are not that good. This is probably, I'm going to say tier 4. I'm sure some people are going to be very upset about that, including myself. I mean, I really like this deck, but we just kind of have to call spade a spade. This deck has not done a single thing. There's no accolades you can speak of for Staru since the beginning of the game. If you look at every other deck, it has either topped recently, topped in set 1, or won an event. Excluding maybe like one or two decks, right? Decks like Androids, like they just received a ton of support, so that kind of puts them into a higher tier. Staru has got nothing. There's nothing that really benefits from playing Staru as opposed to something else, right? Even Topku is probably still a better deck. I think something that Staru needs is a card that, when its power is increased, it does something. So like if you can increase its power, it either negs a battle card by 10k or draws you a card. And once we start getting cards like that, Staru will probably end up being tier 1. But right now it's just a generic blob where you just kind of just pile cards into it and just hope that it does well. And it just doesn't do the same stuff. Like Beerus, has, the ability of being able to board control. U7, which is, I'm going to say, is probably a tier 1 deck still, or now, again. Buffing your entire board by 5k. Like, there's a lot of arguments as to why you can say Staru's better, and there's a lot of content creators, including myself, who have said that Staru is good, but I think everybody just has to realize that the deck is just incredibly mid. Super fun deck, but it's just not competitively going to be a top contender. It's just going to be mid until it starts actually winning. Then if it does, then we have a good deck, but until then, it's just not. And that leaves us with Topku. Oh, I didn't really talk about U7 that much, but I think, it was the de facto red deck in set 1. I think it's going to be the de facto red deck at least until set 3, until we see if Jiren is going to be and I don't think Jiren's going to make U7 not playable. So U7 is probably still going to be the number 1 red deck. Then we have Topku. I think Topku's probably still okay. It's probably still like tier 3. Man, like not being able to play 4 Keflas is just going to hurt. You can substitute other stuff. Like you're going to play probably more of the Keto Peslas if you weren't playing 4. You're playing maybe 3 of the Android 17s. You might be playing more of the Gohans. You might be playing more, you have these tools, but you lost seven copies that you could play from your leader effect. 3 Keflas and then 4 rebrands if you're playing 4 rebrands or 3 rebrands or whatever it was. But the point is that this deck's definitely taking a beating, right? And not being able to awaken until 3 life is still going to be hurtful, because now you can hit somebody from 4 to 3 or from 4 to 2, and now you're putting them in double strike range. And green has 2 double strikers, so it's definitely gonna hurt them a little bit more. You can run cards like Hit and Kefla or Khalifa and the Super Saiyan Blue Goku that's going to be able to take life, and that's all great and stuff, but you're also having to spend more energy for that, and it's just not a fair trade-off. So you can't just say, oh well, we still have these cards, because it doesn't have the same stuff. So I'm sure people will still play Topku, because people invested a lot of money into Topku, the alternate leaders, and then maxing out their decks, and the cards obviously. But I think Topku just take a huge step down. It's just going to be a fair deck probably from here now until we get some more tournament power cards, which next set we are getting U7 and U11 so far, I think is what we've seen. So more U11 cards, they could be tournament of power cards. Which then leads us to blue. Blue has been anti-Topku color, I guess, if you want to call it that. Really, blue hasn't won anything during the Topku era, but blue was kind of holding its own, or trying to get its footing, and I think it's kind of pulled itself from being the worst color in the game in set 1 to probably being tied for first, 1A and 1B, as the best color in set 2 after Topku, right? Blue has the ability of board controlling, which is super good. Being able to punch really big numbers over green decks is going to make blue very viable going forward. So we start with Goku Black. I think Goku Black's going to get played a lot. I would put Goku Black probably in the tier 2 category. Again, crit leaders, very good, but then also like the combination of like the 6-drop Goku Black now, like being able to play out these bigger cards, you are boarding a 40k body that is very difficult to deal with. There's not many cards in the game that can actually deal with that card from a power standpoint and from an energy cost standpoint. So you have this huge body that you can board, turn 4, as early as turn 4. And from that point, you're just going to be, if that card can't be removed, that's a 40k swing every turn that they have to deal with. So Also, with just the other generic blue cards you can kind of run in the deck, you're able to board control, especially like Lord of the Ground decks, and you're playing the crit leader, so like the green decks are going to have to really either sacrifice their hand or take crit where they're not getting a hand. So it's a good trade-off. I think Goku Black is going to be very good, very popular. I think a lot of people wanted to play it in set 1, and it just wasn't as good. So I think now that people have the ability to play the deck and not just have to deal with Topku, you know, every round, I think Goku Black is definitely going to put itself up a tier in being a very strong blue deck contender. Switching gears, we have Fuse Zamasu, which was a strong contender for being able to be sort of a counter pick to Topku, although it wasn't really ever a counter pick. It just played decently well into it being a 25k and being able to you know, to gain a life every turn. I think this deck is probably going to be tier 3. With green coming back, I think that's where the weakness is it's now green's going to be swinging with these gigantic battle cards, and Zamasu doesn't have a big hand to start with anyways, so swinging from a 35k, a 40k, a 45k swing, this is going to start hurting Zamasu quite a bit. And Zamasu, you know, wants to play into the late game, but so does green, so that's going to hurt. I think if you're focusing on yellow or focusing even on red somewhat, I think Zamasu will do pretty well. But into the green matchup, which a lot of people are saying is going to be, you know, represented very highly, I think Zamasu is going to be a little bit in trouble there. Which then leaves us with Trunks and Vegeta. So we'll quickly talk about Trunks. I actually don't think Trunks is very good. I'm going to put Trunks in tier 4. The reason for that is kind of the same thing with with Starterku, is that the deck just hasn't really done anything. And I think it gets outshined by Goku Black and by Vegeta. And then if you want to play a really control heavy deck, you play Zamasu. So I don't think Trunks is going to be very good, at least right now. It's got a ton of little cool tricks you can do, but until we get something that's kind of like the Mai effect, right? Like if we get another card similar to Mai that says when this card's bounced back to hand, or when you bounce another card back to hand, you draw a card, or you bounce something else, that just way you're getting more effects off of the bouncing, rather than just playing a card, getting its on play effect, and then bouncing it back to hand, then to play it again. Because if you're doing that, you might as well just play Vegeta. Like, just Vegeta's just gonna be a better you know, a better overall deck. So and then it leaves us with Vegeta, which I already said. I think Vegeta is, if I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna think Vegeta is probably the best deck in this current 2.5 format. I think Vegeta is crazy. Having all the blue stuff to be able to deal with the aggro decks, and then being able to swing 35Ks minimum at green leaders, when green doesn't naturally play a lot of combo power, is really good for Vegeta. It's a hard deck to starve because you play so many cantrips. Vegeta being able to take advantage of the peel-off combination incredibly well, as well as any blue deck can, but peel-off and Vegeta, man, it's such a powerful combination. So I'm going to put Vegeta as being my best deck currently for the 2.5 format, and this is, I think, probably a pretty good tier list here for you guys to sort of either agree with or disagree with. So as I said, Vegeta, Gohan, Frieza, and Goku, best decks in their colors respectively, and then as you can see, the list goes down from there. Again, I'm not putting these in any order for this video, just because we only have another like month plus of this format anyways, and I don't think we might have one event, so we're not going to really dive into that too much. We'll do more of this when we do our set 3 breakdown, which will be a little more in depth. We'll have a little more information for you guys. So hope you guys did enjoy the video. It was fun to make. Hopefully I can make a comeback and just make some consistent content for you guys. I do actually miss making content. I think it's the biggest thing, is I do just miss the games between Masters and Fusion World. So who knows, we'll see what I can do. But if you guys did enjoy the video, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Again, we'll be back to making some content here, so cheers to that, and I will see you guys in the next video.